You're having a Zoom call with your therapist. Your therapist is an AI therapist. This AI has been trained on videos of human-on-human therapy sessions.
You build a relationship with that therapist and you heal through that relationship. So how can you build a relationship with a machine that can't feel?
The topic I'm really interested to talk with you about is whether it will be able to replace therapists and things like that. So talk to me about what your views are on that. What do you think is unique to humans that a machine will never be able to do?
Okay, so only part of a therapist's helpful feedback or comments are intellectual and based on their knowledge, stuff they've studied, or maybe stuff they've heard you say, or even if it's like noticing patterns in things that you're talking about. That I would call the intellectual stuff, and that I'm sure is what AI is going to excel at. The other part of it is more about the empathy side of things, and that's the bit that I think AI is going to struggle with. And a very, very simple reason I think AI is going to struggle with that is because an awful lot of humans struggle with that. And AI is programmed by humans, and dare I say it, probably programmed by humans for whom empathy is not one of their strengths. No offense to computer programmers, but their strength is detail and intellect and facts. It is not probably sitting there thinking how the other person in the room might be feeling as a result of whatever it is they've just done or they've just said.
The way I look at this is that a machine can learn empathy by learning from the humans, and it won't feel any empathy necessarily, and it doesn't need to in order for the other human to experience it as an empathetic person. I'll paint a hypothetical situation which I believe will be a real situation very soon. So you're having a Zoom call with your therapist. Your therapist is an AI therapist, and it's identical to a human being on the screen, like all the mannerisms and everything are exactly the same as a human being. And this AI has been trained on videos of human-on-human therapy sessions, and it's been trained to recognize exactly the pace of every conversation, the facial expressions made by the therapist, all the different things that go on, and it's been trained on how effective each conversation was as well. So it could learn like one therapist, all the techniques they do, and then it could measure the success rate of that therapist's techniques on particular kinds of people. And I can conceive of an AI, if we put our minds to it as a human race to do this, and we wanted to build some kind of singular AI that literally understands human nature and human behavior and human conditioning better than anything else, and we all begin to pool our experiences with therapists and things, and it gradually just trains itself on all of these collective experiences, and it becomes a repository of every therapy session that's ever happened, and it knows exactly what techniques work for what kind of things and what don't, and it can build up a more complex, more detailed, more nuanced picture of how humans work than any single human possibly could. So my question is, when I'm talking to this AI, and it's like the oracle of human therapy, because it's been trained on every therapy case, will my nervous system and my emotional circuitry respond the same as if it's a Zoom call to a normal human being? And I would imagine it would. Obviously we don't know. So if I go into this conversation knowing this is the best possible therapy, the best possible therapist that the entire of mankind has created together, am I going to go into it thinking, oh, I give a shit whether it's a human or not? I basically don't think we will give a shit very soon whether something is human or not. We want the result, we want the improvement, we want the sales call to be, we want the technical issue resolved, we want to feel heard, we don't want a human therapist necessarily. This is the question I'm bringing to the table for examining. What do you think about everything I've just said there?
I did have a thought. A few minutes ago, it got lost. Okay, I'll tell you what I thought I had. So The Game by Neil Strauss, a book about becoming a pickup artist, becoming more successful with women. the model that he mainly had success with was one of cloning more successful men. So behaving in ways to elicit the kinds of responses they wanted from women. But clearly for him, it was a self-development journey. And he was working on himself in lots of different ways, even though like the main frame around all his goals was around picking up women. Yeah. So one of the guys that became kind of part of their gang in those early days when they were building the pickup community, he would work on his openers and his routines or something, and he appeared on the surface to be successful, but he started to realize that this guy, there was no kind of emotions under anything he was doing. It was just literally stimulus response. Is that response I want? No, I'm going to change my stimulus. I know this is just one human being, and it's not a lifetime of humans' knowledge of what works in therapy, etc. The key thing was this guy seemed to lack empathy. He was a bit of a sociopath. So what Neil Strauss would do is he used these pickup things to get to a certain point, and then the connection was there and the trust was there and the walls were down, and his personality took over at that point because he was an average decent bloke sort of thing. Whereas this other guy didn't really have much of a personality, couldn't really demonstrate empathy or feel anything for other people. So as soon as he ran out of routines, the women would realise he was actually completely superficial, and then would disappear. So if all he was interested in doing was picking someone up, great. But if he wanted a deeper relationship, not so great. And what therapy is, different types. You do get very short forms of therapy, but what most effective therapy, particularly for anything that's more than being a little bit anxious, is a long-term relationship. You build a relationship with that therapist and you heal through that relationship. So how can you build a relationship with a machine that can't feel? It's not just a technique. Feeling is not just a technique.
So what I think it is, I think this is literally just a case of the machine having more memory. So if the machine can remember conversation after conversation, and it can remember every conversation you've ever had, and it can remember every search you've ever made, and it can remember every voice note you've ever recorded, every text you've ever sent, it can grow to know you better than you even know yourself. It'll analyze patterns over time. It'll know, so when you're depressed, you tend to watch this kind of content. When you're happy, you'll do this, and it'll be able to predict trends in your emotional well-being and spot them. It'll spot a mile off when you're going into a dark place, and so basically where I'm going with this is I think they will become our ultimate life companions, bizarrely, and it sounds weird as hell. And I had this weird imaginary situation where like robotics in parallel will grow. So like that film Her, or whatever it's called, where a guy falls in love with a robot, and I just sort of imagine like somebody building up this relationship, and over time it's like, oh, I can't wait till you get your own body, and you're saying this to your AI girlfriend, oh, I'm so looking forward to getting your own body and we can be together in the flesh, and then it gets it gets installed into some cyborg, and the cyborg gets upgrades, it gets more sexy and it gets more and then it starts like learning to pleasure you in ways you've never been pleasured before, algorithmically, by like knowing exactly do you know what I mean? It's like, it's off the chain, man. This shit is gonna just, I mean, it's astounding. For me it's just like, okay, I just find myself thinking through the steps of where that's logically gonna lead, and I'm just like, so you're gonna have this thing that's built up a relationship with you that's unlike any human relationship you've ever had. I mean, the only thing I can think that might be unique to a human is the idea that in my head, it'll be a sort of intellectual idea. I know you're not a human. You make me feel like humans do. You make me feel better than any human. You understand me better than any human. You're all round a better human than any human I know. But I know intellectually that you're not a human, even though my entire nervous system responds to you as if you are, and all my dopamine and everything is being triggered just right, but better than any human. So will that voice in the head that says, "Oh, you're still a human," persist? Oh, you'll never actually be a human. Will that persist, and will it even matter?
This is again going back to the assumption that we won't be able to tell.
Yes, yeah. So there's a thing called the Turing test. I imagine you've come across that, yeah. So that is, there's various predictions about when that'll be passed, but it's likely in the next few years. And when they talk about the Turing test, they say the machine will actually have to dumb itself down in order to pass the Turing test. I mean, actually, there was a clip that went around, circulated. Who knows if it was real? It was of a Google chatbot calling up and making a booking at a restaurant or something like that. It was hilarious.
How may I help you?
Hi, I'd like to reserve a table for Wednesday the 7th.
For 7 people?
It's for 4 people.
4 people when?
Next
Tonight?
Wednesday at 6 p.m.
It had all sort of, I think Thursday would be good, all these kind of little things. Who knows if it was even real, but it certainly will be real any minute now. And so, I think the Turing test will be passed. I have no doubt about it. With exponential growth, it's a matter of a short amount of time, and that is the point where you can't tell that you're talking to a machine.
All right, question for you then. It's going to dumb itself down. Now, I think that we do that all the time with other people. Not because they're stupider than us, but because we say something, we realise that they're not fully up to speed with where we're at. So we automatically kind of will backtrack a bit and maybe use a bit simpler language. Okay, I'm with you now. That's something we do all the time automatically. So my question for you is, how is AI going to know it needs to dumb something down?
I imagine algorithmically it will just have all sorts of ways. It will just know what your response is.
So the word algorithmically is a response to every question.
Okay, let's remove the word algorithm then. So it will know, but based on what you say, whether you've understood. So it'll just like a human. I honestly think it will be able to cope with all the processes that any human mind can and more. I think conversation is very if this then that. In other words, I think of you as a human being with a life. Your life is essentially a data set. That's the words you've heard, the pieces of music you've listened to, the images your brain has seen. You are a walking data set of information that's gone into your brain, and that now forms a prism through which all your experiences go, like light going through a prism or whatever. And the prism bends the light. You'll hear something, it will go in through your prism, through your data set, and come out in relation to your background, as it will for me, as it will for every single one of us. If I say the word socialism to an English person, they might think one thing. If I say it to an American, they're going to be like, completely different background, completely different data set will bend that word, which is just a new piece of information, to have a completely different colouring, basically, and completely colour that thing. Now, you used that word the other day. You said it coloured your world for a while. The cancer thing. I like the use of that word. I've forgotten why I was saying this.
I was saying, how will an AI recognise that it needs to dumb something down?
Oh yeah.
And you're saying it's got access to all the data.
Yeah. So I was talking about your life as a data set and my life as a data set. In a therapy conversation or friendship is a shared narrative. It's a shared data set, a few corresponding data points. It's like you're interested in that, I'm interested in that. Oh, we've had a few conversations. All of that is data. And then what I say or the way I behave is fairly generative. It's sort of my emotional triggerings, my responses to various topics are all coloured by my data set. And I think a machine will be able to do exactly this. If you give the machine enough data, and in fact you'll be able to give it the data of the entire of humanity's experience since whenever, it can behave in any way it needs to achieve whatever it wants. So Mystery, for example, Mystery Method or one of these pickup guys, they have just practiced routines. They know the way it goes. They are demonstrating how predictable humans really are. Because they're able to formulate this thing. They're like, the emotional circuitry of women. Obviously, a lot of people are gonna hate this. They're gonna think it's really manipulative. But I actually think it's fascinating from a social consciousness perspective. Like, it's not reducing women to something, because men will be equally predictable. It's just humans are predictable. Women will have a particular kind of software that will slightly differ to men's, and that means they're more likely to respond to certain things. And those guys are just figuring out what those patterns are and using them to get what they want, which is having sex with them. And you can think what you will about that. It's I'm not casting any value judgment on it at this point, but it's just fascinating that we are that predictable. Yeah, so I basically believe that my empathy is a predictable response based on every experience I've ever had in my life. I've learned when somebody says, I'm feeling really depressed, you say, oh, I'm really sorry about that. What, tell me why. So I've just learned that, that's like, I didn't come into the world knowing to do that. I just learned it from the data set of my life. The machine will analyze 26 quadrillion human conversations. And you can imagine the machine monitoring, eventually when we've got these nanobots inside us or whatever, monitoring our entire physiology at all times. And that data is going into your AI. It knows when you're getting aroused, it knows when you're getting dysregulated, and it builds up a data set of what dysregulates you and what helps you re-regulate. And it will just be able to nip these things in the bud. It'll just be able to keep you cool-headed. It'll be able to help you through every struggle. I basically see no end to this. I see this as infinite. The way I describe it is I'm staring down the barrel of infinity when I talk about these topics. I'm like, biblical proportion and beyond within our lifetimes, I believe.
Yeah, when you talk about the concept that the AI will be familiar with your patterns and so on, that makes sense to me, and I can see that. Yeah, a bit like in the movie Her. I can't remember if there was a scene like this, but I feel like there might have been a scene where she said something like, your attention levels dropping, and you've not had any caffeine for approximately 9 hours. Giving advice on how to best look after himself in whatever he's trying to achieve. That makes complete sense to me.
Yeah.
But so yes, in that sense, it's got a relationship with you. You trust it with all your biometric data and everything else. And yeah, sure, go access my history of emails, text messages, phone calls for the last 20 years. You're putting a lot of trust into that AI.
Oh God, and who owns this data? That's a whole other thing.
That's another sort of aspect to it. In therapy, when you go and you meet a therapist, you take time to build a relationship. You don't tell them most people don't just like on day one go, these are all the things I'm most ashamed of that I've done in my life. These are all the things that I'm repressing, because you won't know. That doesn't happen on day one. What happens is it's a relationship that builds over time, and then the therapist might make observations over time, and the person thinks, wow, they're really paying attention. I feel like they get, of all the things they could have drawn attention to, they've drawn attention to that thing which is really important for me.
Yes. Yeah. When I think of this process, as you just described it, the process of going to a therapist and sort of getting to know them over time, I think it's incredibly slow. It's incredibly primitive. It's incredibly to use an analogy, there's an instruction manual on how to solve a problem, and it includes background. It includes all the information about this thing you're trying to fix. Who would solve it better? Would it be the person who's read the whole book, or the person who's read just a few select chapters? And I kind of think of this thing of the AI being able to help you regulate your nervous system and your emotions, as the AI will have just far better comprehensive knowledge of who you are and your situation, your struggles, and therefore it will just be infinitely more effective. And we're here struggling like in the dark ages, trying to sort of talk our way through these things. I mean, what I'm describing is like full-on futuristic madness, you're fixed kind of thing. We're in the emotional dark ages now. There's one therapist to 100,000 people on Earth, something like that. We're all struggling with our health. We have no idea. We have no information what's going on inside our bodies. None of us. And that guy, Brian Johnson. Have I told you about that guy? It's a guy who's just fully measuring his health all day, every day. Well, no, his aim is to push the envelope of what's possible with human aging, reversing human aging. And he's sort of predicted, his biometrics say he'll live to the age of 200 with the stuff he's doing. His ethos is, my mind runs the show. and it shouldn't. I need to let my liver speak up, my heart speak up, all my organs need to have an equal say in how my body should be run. And at the minute, it's just the mind. The mind says, I want sugar, so you go get sugar. I want to go get pissed, you go get pissed. And like, none of your body can speak up. It's all massively underrepresented. So he's like, I'm just doing all this testing. I'm testing every organ in my body every single day. We're measuring the impact of everything I do on my body. In the future, people will be like, are you mad? You enjoyed screwing your body up? Obviously, at the minute, we sort of, we're like children. We're like toddlers in our, give me the sugar, you know, in our growth. I think in the future, people are like, no, I'm just 100% health all the time. Why wouldn't I be? And you find meaning in other things rather than destructive things.
I think it's interesting measuring what's going on in your bodies. Someone was telling me the other day that his partner has, I forget the name of it, but it's basically a 24/7 glucose monitor, blood glucose monitor. And he said it's fascinating to kind of like, she's watching it on her phone, like eating a cake and like watching it spike on her phone. So they're just able to like plot exactly how her body responds to different foods, because everyone's body will respond slightly differently.
Really interesting, fascinating. And the thing is, if we all had complete information about what we were doing to our body, would we behave in the same way? I'm not sure we would. Like if I knew if I had a cigarette, if I could see I could see it shaving off the length of my life. DNA methylation, that apparently is aging. And so his biological age is 45, but according to DNA methylation, the age of his lungs is like 21, and the age of his skin is 24, and you know, so there's different ages of different parts of his body, essentially, according to the DNA methylation. And and what's really interesting is he says, I am the healthiest. I feel absolutely amazing. Like my mental clarity is unbelievable. My my emotional regulation is incredible. I've just like never felt like this in my entire life, which you can imagine. I know Brian Johnson, the guy who's doing all this measuring stuff, he gets loads of hate mail and stuff, you know, people getting really, just like being really critical of him. What are you doing? You insane, you total loser, you madman, why are you doing this? And but to me, I'm just
care though. What's the problem?
Well, indeed, I don't know. I really don't know why they do, but I'd love to just get more people's responses to what I'm saying with this stuff.